So get this. Last Christmas, my sister announced to everybody in my family about how my husband was being deceitful. Well, turns out we all listened and I got away from him. But guess what? Years later, guess who she's getting married to? If you guessed my ex-husband, then you guessed correct. But guys, there is more to this story, and it gets pretty insane. When I was younger, my parents used to warn me against hanging out with bad friends because they could ruin my life and leave me in a dark place. But they did not warn me against a bad sister. They made it look like only strangers could hurt me, but my biological sister absolutely ruined my life. If anyone had seen Hilda and me as we grew up, no one would have believed we would reach a stage where we would no longer talk to each other. As children, my parents taught Hilda and me to watch each other's backs and to look out for each other. Hilda was my older sister, and right from childhood, I used to tell her things I could not say to my parents because we were almost like best friends. Our parents raised us in love and provided everything that we needed. They also taught us to be contented with what we had and not think of converting other people's property. Well, my parents always preached contentment mainly because of Hilda. She was the kind of sister that wanted what every other child owned. And in the beginning, my parents thought she was just a child, but as we grew older, they realized it was a bad habit that she needed to get rid of. Hilda was never satisfied with whatever she had. She even changed courses twice in school because she thought it was wise to follow someone else's career and passion. Aside from that, she had a track record of making decisions that would backfire on her. Fast forward to when Hilda and I were teenagers and ready to go to college. She started college before me, but always had issues because she could not decide on the course that she wanted to study. At first, she said she wanted to do a particular course, and in her third year, she changed her mind. My parents knew what her problem was, and they tried everything possible to make Hilda change, but the more they tried, the worse Hilda became. Hilda did not have any friends because everything about her was a competition. She competed with all her former best friends for clothes, shoes, boyfriends, and other irrelevant things, including those who tried to get close to her. They left her when they all realized how kind of a person she was. The only friend she had in college was a girl neither I nor my parents liked. She was wild. Dressed funny and had all kinds of tattoos all over her body. I was not surprised when Hilda told me the girl was her new bestie, but I knew their relationship would simply not last, because it took a lot of tolerance to be with Hilda. The same applied to her relationship. She did not know how to keep one. She was always jumping from one relationship to the other and always blamed her exes for everything that went wrong. Concerning college, Hilda eventually dropped out, but she was lucky to get a job in one of my dad's friends' organizations. On the other hand, I completed college and graduated with a degree in medical lab science. Before I graduated from college, Hilda and I were still cool with each other. I used to tell her what was happening in my life, the boys hitting on me, and our regular sister talks. But all that changed after I graduated from college and moved into my own apartment. I did that because I did not want to go back and live with my parents, but it turned out that Hilda was not very happy about that. Everyone in my family, including my cousins, knew Hilda was in trouble, and my parents were tired of her. She was living in the house, and she was not paying rent or contributing to groceries at the age of 27. And eventually they kicked her out. When they did, I was forced to ask Hilda to come stay with me because none of my cousins wanted her. When Hilda came, she told me she would only spend a week or two, so she could use some time to find her own place, but she stayed for more than 2 months. I would not have a problem if Hilda stayed 3 months with me. I enjoyed having company, but I did not like Hilda's annoying character. In the morning, I would go to work and come home to a messy house. If Hilda ate in the morning, I would do the dishes in the evening, and she never cleaned, did the laundry, or even contributed to the food. She was also working, but Most of her work was from home since she was more of a virtual assistant. Not just that. Hilda barely cooked throughout her stay at my place. If she did, she would eat everything and say, "Oh, I didn't know you would be hungry." And if I cooked or left something in the freezer, big mistake. She would eat all of it and leave the canned food for me. It was pretty annoying, and she was getting on my nerves. Those were the same things she did at my parents' house, and they were forced to kick her out, and I talked to Hilda multiple times about it, but nothing changed. As if not helping at home was not enough, Hilda used my stuff too. If she wanted to go out with a new man she met online, which was frequent, Hilda would take out new clothing that I had not worn, and she would wear it. It was easy to identify them because there were still tags on them. And the most annoying part was we were a different size. I was smaller and she was larger, and by the end of the day, she would expand the clothing so much, I would just leave it to her. The first time it happened, I did not have a problem with her, but when I noticed it was becoming a pattern, I was forced to ask her to leave. I didn't know Hilda was mad at me for asking her to leave, and she held a grudge. When she left my house, she went back home and was forced to pay rent and contribute to the groceries because living with my parents was easier than living on her own. After a week, she left, and my mom called me to ask what I did to Hilda because she had been saying many nasty things about me. She told me Hilda was saying I was proud and rude to her because I earned better than her and I lived in my own apartment, and she would teach me a lesson. When I heard that, I wanted to be mad because I did everything I could for Hilda, but she was ungrateful. She did not contribute to rent, and I never asked her to. During the first 2 weeks, she lived with me, and I got her everything she wanted, but she forgot everything. I was very mad, but it was pointless to be angry at Hilda because it was just for her personality. A few months after Hilda left my house, I met my ex-husband Frank at a bar, where I went for a girls' night out with my friends. And we just clicked, and by this time, Hilda and I had reconciled and got along whenever I visited my parents. After weeks of talking to him, I told her about Frank, and she did not seem very happy for me. I'd love to say that Hilda never loved Frank or any guy I told her about. She always had 1 or 2 things to pick against him, which was very annoying. I liked Frank because he was decent, hardworking, and showered me with love. Frank was a giver, and he would get me gifts even without me asking him. He often delivered the gifts to me at my parents' house if he knew I was spending the weekend there, and Hilda saw them. Eventually, Frank and I started dating after 4 months of knowing each other, and Hilda kicked against it. She said it was too soon, and I did not know him well enough to agree to date him. I was surprised it came from someone who accepted to be a guy's girlfriend the same night she met him, but I believe she was just looking out for me. The first time I took Frank to introduce him to my parents, I noticed how Hilda acted around him. She did not expect him to be so good-looking, tall, and drive in a nice car. I told her everything about Frank except, well, his look and what he did. I didn't think it was necessary and had other reasons. That day, I was amazed to see Hilda act so nice to Frank. She received him warmly, and even my parents were shocked at her sudden kindness. Maybe she was trying to impress him. No one knew, but we were all happy. Hilda was known to snub my ex-boyfriends in the past, and none liked her either. Frank also liked Hilda, and they got along well. I was careful enough to not tell him anything about her so it would not ruin their relationship. I wanted him to know Hilda by himself, so he would not judge based on whatever I told him. Frank and I dated for 2 years, and within those 2 years, he was not exactly the best boyfriend. I had caught him cheating on me once, but he pleaded that it would not happen again, and I forgave him. When he cheated on me, I told Hilda about it because I did not have anyone else to talk to, and she insisted that I break up with Frank. I could not do that because I believed he would change, and I had put so much into our relationship to leave it for another woman. Also, I took Frank's words that he would not cheat on me again, and I gave him a second chance. After Hilda learned about Frank's infidelity, her attitude towards him changed, and even my parents noticed. She became cold towards him and did not sit next to him during dinner like she used to. She was mad at him for something, and Frank knew I had told her. He begged her to and promised her he would not do anything to hurt me again. Yeah, it took a while, but Hilda came around, and they returned to how they used to be. Frank proposed to me when the time was right, and our wedding plans started. And while planning the wedding, Hilda was supportive but had multiple mood swings. And one day she would be fine and happy, and the next day she would act cold towards everyone. From our childhood, Hilda was very unpredictable, so it was best to follow her however she was. Eventually, Frank and I had a beautiful wedding, and I moved in with him. The first year of our marriage was fantastic. We were two lovebirds, and we loved each other so much. Frank pampered me and showered me with so much love, and we were happy, and our bond grew every day. Our intimate life was excellent, and I cared for Frank as much as possible. Hilda visited Frank and I occasionally, and my ex-husband and I did not have a problem with that. She even grew closer to Frank, and I was glad that they did. We came from a family where many people did not like Hilda, but she did not have the sense of belongings with our aunts, cousins, and uncles, and seeing her and Frank's bond made me very happy. Most times, if I was at work and Frank was at home, she would visit and wait for me until I got home. One of the things I loved about Frank was that his gifts did not stop. He spoiled me silly and got me jewelry, shoes, clothes, designer bags. He even gave me the latest version of the iPhone, and Hilda saw all of this too and would playfully ask Frank for hers. If Frank was in a good mood, he would give her some money or promise to get her something the next time he went shopping, and he always did. Like every other marriage, Frank and I had our fights and arguments. Most times it would be over something that was not important. Sometimes it would be over a woman. Frank was a realtor, so his work exposed him to different kinds of women who wanted to buy or sell their properties. Not like I had issues with any of them, but there was a particular contact he never took the call in my presence. I suspected something fishy. When Frank noticed I knew something, the lady stopped calling. Frank's attitude towards me changed in the second year of our marriage last year, and he returned home late, and whenever I asked him, he would either say he was working or out with some realtors. This continued for a while, and he would often come home reeking of female cologne. All the signs indicated he was cheating, but I wanted to be sure. We also became distant, and our intimacy level dropped because he was always tired. One of those days, I used his fingerprint to unlock his phone while he was asleep. And what I saw absolutely broke my heart. He was cheating on me, but with multiple ladies, and I even found a dating app on his phone. Because of that heartbreak, I called Hilda and told her everything I saw on Frank's phone. She was mad and asked if I had confronted Frank, but I told her he was sleeping and wanted to discuss things with him before making any stupid decisions. Hilda was even angry at me and called me names. We were already in a festival period, which was Christmas, so I didn't want anything to ruin the Christmas spirit. I also did not want my parents to be bothered about me. The following day, I woke up and Frank knew something was wrong. I didn't tell him I went through his phone because I knew he would be mad, so I lied and told him I had the flu. Meanwhile, I was boiling inside with anger, and I wanted to divorce him, but I wanted to do it within the new year. I had also taken screenshots of Frank's conversations with his lover, and I sent them to my phone and deleted every trace that I touched his phone. This was evidence I sent to Hilda. Update number 1. 2 days after discovering Frank was cheating on me again, we went to my parents' house to spend Christmas. My parents insisted that Frank and I come over on Christmas Day. When we arrived, they could tell I was in low spirits, but I did everything possible to be active and help in the kitchen. Hilda was the one who made it evident that something was going on through her personal jokes and subtly attacking Frank whenever he spoke. At one point, I had to drag her to the kitchen to ask her to stop, and she would lay low for a while. Meanwhile, Frank discovered I had gone through his phone, but he could not ask me. If he did, I would have said everything I was holding back and we would miss my family get-together. We had the family tradition of gifting one another during Christmas, so Frank and I also bought gifts for everybody, and we knew we would get ours. Frank had been getting Christmas gifts from the year I introduced him to my parents. After everything was set, everyone gathered to eat, and while eating, Hilda started asking Frank weird questions. All the questions she asked made Frank uncomfortable, and I was uncomfortable too, to be honest. I kicked her from under the table several times, and she sat directly across from me. But she ignored me, and finally she asked the last question that insinuated that Frank was cheating on me, and everybody was stunned by her question. Frank choked when she asked the question, and it gave him out. When Hilda was done beating around the bush, she told my parents that Frank was cheating on me, and the most embarrassing part was 3 of my cousins were at the table, and I could not hide the shame. I don't remember when I started crying, I just felt a rush of emotions. It was very embarrassing for Frank and me, but what was more embarrassing was that I pushed him off me when he came to comfort me, and my anger just exploded, and I said many hurtful things to him. No one, not even my parents, had heard me speak that way before, and they were all shocked. I was also mad at Hilda for not keeping her mouth shut, and I hated her embarrassment in front of everyone, and Hilda looked very happy after she let the cat out of the bag, and that's when I knew she had been planning to tell the whole family. There was an annoying smirk on her face, and despite how angry I yelled at her, she did not say anything. She just sat there staring at me. Frank knew it would be insensitive for him to remain in our house, so he was the first to leave, and I had to take an Uber home. When I got home, I packed the things I needed and went to stay at a friend's place. It was the worst Christmas of my life. And Hilda added salt to the injury by exposing us to the whole family. If I had known it would end up like that, I would not have told her about it. Also, my parents would not have known that Frank cheated on me before, and he was doing it again with multiple women. But Hilda exposed all of it. Days after Hilda ruined things for me, she started sending angry text messages, saying that I was ungrateful and calling me names, and she said she did what she did because she loved me, and now I was ignoring her calls and simply not responding to her messages. I did not want to talk to anyone, especially Hilda, so I ignored her. Update number 2. In January, I contacted a lawyer, and after my divorce paper was processed, I divorced Frank. I also made up with Hilda because I realized she did everything. After all, she was looking out for me, and I might not have carried on with a divorce if it had been left to me alone. I loved Frank, and everything he told me softened my heart. Hilda knew that I was a softie, which is why she confronted and exposed Frank in front of the whole family. After the divorce, I moved on with my life and focused on myself and my career. I got a new apartment, and Hilda visited me a lot. I believe she was one of my only best friends, and she had my back just as our parents had taught us. In the following months, I met a guy, Dean, and we became close friends, and Dean knew I had just been divorced, and he was still good to me. Dean was also divorced, and he had 3 kids with his ex-wife. He was not on the same financial level as Frank, but he treated me with love. I didn't want us to rush things since I was still healing from Frank's betrayal. But I did not shut Dean out too. When Hilda found out about Dean, she did not look pleased. She said it was too fast for me to move on, and I needed to heal properly before getting close to Dean. I thought she was being funny because Dean and I were not serious. We were just friends and we liked each other. We never got intimate and were still getting to know ourselves better, and I had gone out with his kid 3 times. They were beautiful children. His oldest child was 8 and the others were 6 and 4. Hilda was furious at me when she found out about Dean and his kids. She switched from being worried about me healing to being concerned that I was dating a divorced man with 3 children. She tried everything possible to separate me from Dean. I knew he was paying child support for 3 children because their mother won custody, and Hilda used that to her advantage. She told me that Dean would not take care of me the way I wanted because of his responsibility, and there was also a possibility that he would go back to, the mother of his children since they already had 3 kids together. I knew she had a valid point, but I still liked Dean and wanted to give us a shot. He contributed to how fast I healed, and he supported me throughout the time I was hurting. When Hilda figured I wasn't listening to her, she involved my parents. That weekend, my parents invited me to spend time with them, and I didn't know it was a trap. Hilda had told them about my budding relationship with Dean, and she convinced them that the relationship was a ticking time bomb. My parents, especially my mom, talked to me and warned me against being with Dean. One of her reasons was even though I invested my time, energy, and resources in raising Dean's children, they would still choose their mother over me. And it would be a lot of stress to raise and look after 3 children at once. So she encouraged me to take my time and find a guy with at least 1 child or no child and start a family with him. Hilda knew I would listen to my mother, and I did. I wasn't mad at her for ratting me out. I still believe she was looking after me and she wanted the best for my life. Update number 3. I did not break up with Dean because we were not in a relationship yet, but everything we had ended. The visitations, going on dates, picking me up from work, and hanging out with his kids, it ended. I didn't want to lead him on, so I thought it was best to set boundaries. With Dean out of my life, I became very lonely, and I resulted to becoming a YouTube addict and spending time with my family on most weekends. Around the same time, I noticed a lot of things were very different with Hilda. So much changed about her, and she was always on her phone, smiling and blushing. During the few weekends I had spent with my parents, I could tell that her excitement and happiness was consistent. Also, her dress, it changed. The way she dressed. She never used to wear expensive clothing except she took them from me, but I noticed that every week she had something new. She either bought new bags, clothing, jewelry, or something peculiar. It was so evident, and even my parents questioned her about her expensive possessions. Everyone knew that her pay as a virtual assistant could not buy all those things. One day, when I went over to my parents' house on a Saturday, we got talking, and I pressed to know how she got all those things, and Hilda told me they were gifts from a man. When she said so, I was very happy for her. She barely received gifts from men in the past because none of her relationships lasted, and I was genuinely happy and excited for her. And it was such a relief for me that she met someone who genuinely loved her and showered her with gifts. She eventually broke the news to my parents, and she was in a relationship, and my parents were very happy for her. The only thing was, she said she would not introduce him to us yet until she felt the time was right. We didn't have a problem with that, as far as she was happy. Although I was curious to know who her boyfriend was, I figured he had to be someone who was doing well financially because of the kind of gifts that she received, and he was making her happy. On the other hand, I did not think I was ready to be with a man yet. I still felt bad for ending my last friendship with Dean, and I just wanted to be sure I was completely healed and not hurting because I opened up my heart to someone. At that time, too, I was emotionally and mentally drained, but I drew strength from my family, especially from Hilda, who advised me on the right things to do. I'll be honest, I stalked my ex-husband to see if he was doing well or if he had moved on without me. And he did. All the pictures he posted on Facebook and Instagram projected that he was having the best time of his life, and seeing that hurt me a lot. I confided in Hilda about it, and she told me to block him on all our mutual social media platforms, and without thinking twice, I did. Update number 4. Sometime last month, in May, Hilda called me over the week and asked if I would be coming home that weekend. I told her I didn't know, and she insisted that I came home because she had something to show me and tell the whole family. She hinted to me that it was about her boyfriend, and I assured her I was going to be there. That weekend I went home and I was very excited for her. She surprised me with her engagement ring and I was over the roof for her. The ring was beautiful and looked expensive. That Saturday afternoon, while we were having lunch, Hilda broke the news that she was getting married in 2 weeks, and we were surprised because it was a very short time to plan the wedding. When my mother asked her who the man was, she excitedly said Frank. When she said Frank, everyone was confused because the only Frank we knew was my ex-husband. My dad was the most confused person, so he asked Hilda if she was referring to my ex-husband, and she nodded. Well, everywhere went quiet for a moment, and I busted into a loud laughter. My parents joined me, and when we were done laughing, I asked Hilda to stop joking and tell her who she was really getting married to, but it turned out she wasn't joking. Indeed, she was getting married to Frank, and she even showed us pictures of both of them kissing in the shopping mall. At that moment, I felt my body go cold, and I could not believe Hilda was serious. She was dating Frank all along, and he was responsible for all the gifts and money she spent. She told us she bumped into Frank one day, and he begged her to listen to his own side of the story. From there, she realized he was not a bad person, and he was only caught up in his lover's web. She told us she fell in love with Frank, and they realized that they were meant for each other, and I was so disappointed and mad that I jumped at her and pulled her. Because she was stronger, she threw me off, and our parents separated us from fighting. In that anger, Hilda said so many terrible things to me. Things a sister should not have said to a sister, and my parents were so disappointed. They told her they wanted nothing to do with the wedding and that they would disown her if she went ahead with it. Well, Hilda did not mind. She told my parents the wedding would go on with or without them, and she left the house. From all the things she said, I discovered that Hilda was never happy that everything in my life was perfect. I got married before her. All the while, I had been playing into her hands, and everything turned out the way she wanted. The reason she discouraged me about Dean was because she did not want me to get into another relationship when she could not even keep one. She also wanted the things Frank got for me, and it was more reason she threw herself on him and ended up betraying me. As for the wedding, Hilda went ahead with him, but unfortunately it did not hold up because 2 of Frank's baby's mamas showed up and interrupted the priest when he asked the question. No one knew Frank impregnated those women, and the funny thing was, he promised both of them marriage. I did not attend the wedding, but one of my cousins attended it and posted the video she made on our family WhatsApp group. That was the most embarrassing thing I'd ever seen. In the end, Frank changed his mind about getting married to Hilda and took responsibility for the 2 pregnancies. My parents disowned her, so when everything went south, she did not have anywhere to go. I even cut ties with her because I could not stand that level of betrayal. Right now, I'm healing, and I have met a kind man, but we're still in the talking stage. I don't think I can ever forgive Hilda, and I hope I don't because she has done a lot of damage to my life. Alright, so I'm not really surprised that Frank's 2 baby mamas decided to show up at the wedding. I mean, OP actually dodged a bullet, not only with Frank, but also with the sister. OP cut off her sister, and so did the parents, and I think that's what they needed to do. Because this was such a toxic story, and there was just a lot of moments where I was saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. I would like to hear from you guys what exactly you thought about this story, what exactly you thought about Frank and all his deceitful ways, and let me tell ya, I would like to hear from you about those baby mamas who strolled into the wedding and basically ruined everyone's day. So drop your comments down below. Let's discuss this in the comment section. That's all the stories for today. I'm so happy you guys joined me on today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you guys want more daily videos, my name's Mr. Reddito. I animate and narrate stories every single day. So stop on by, see what we're up to, and if you want, smash that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. And remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.